today on the Prosperity Nation podcast.
They actually don't affect what's going to happen today, and they don't affect what's going to happen tomorrow. My past gives me information about myself, and it gives me data that I can use and work with, but it's really up to you to make your tomorrow happen any way you want your tomorrow to happen. You don't have to be tied to that.
But my point is, it's not a pen.
It's not a pen. No emotional support pens today.
No, okay. We definitely need them.
I'm Angie Grainger. Welcome to the Prosperity Nation podcast. And this is my co-host, Elise Eropkin. Hi, Elise.
Hi.
Hey. We have some always fun and interesting and maybe a little controversial today on our topic, but we just want to make sure that we're welcoming you to the show where we get to talk about living a life you love without money holding you back. And I know it doesn't always feel that way, but it doesn't have to. That's our point. Elise, what are we going to talk about today?
Today, we are going to talk about I guess it's more of a question. Does the past define you or not?
Yeah. Oh, that's a great question because there's arguments on both sides of that, huh? Hey, maybe we should do it in debate style.
Oh boy, I've actually never been in a debate, not even in high school. Yeah, no.
Oh,
I was never on a debate team. That's not my area of expertise. Definitely not a debater. So
we don't have to fight, but that's for sure. But and I was going to say that probably won't work so good for me either because I actually kind of believe on both sides of this.
Mm-hmm.
Does your past define you or not? Because on one hand, it's absolutely not. Whatever you do today is affecting your future. And on the other hand, how tied are you into your past? So,
I'm the same.
Well, before we dive into it, we do want to ask you, hey, like and subscribe to our videos. We are gaining some traction and we really, really appreciate your support. We are here to bring hope in the middle of some of this chaos we're going through and, let everybody know that it is possible to not be stressed about money and not be buried on confusion. And so share this with your friends and family. We want to be part of your journey too. And don't forget to let us know what you're thinking, in the comments or emailing us and be part of our journey with us. That's right. With that, Elise, let me ask you your point of view on this. And so from your point of view, do you think that your past is driving you to where you are or where you're going? Or do you think that it's separate from or not that?
Oh, God. It's so hard because I've experienced both. I think that I would not be who I am now without whatever I went through. I would not be sitting here today on this podcast with you and Sean. Definitely would not. So to that degree, my past definitely shaped who I am right now, but I also don't feel like I'm stuck to it. Yeah. I don't feel like anything I may have done in the past is who I am also. But I feel like I've learned from my past and I've been able to grow from those experiences and continue to create on my present and my future.
Yeah. It's so similar us as human beings as the stock market because, the stock market, we can look back over time and see what's the S&P 500 done and we can see patterns and they do give us data and they do give us understandings, but they actually don't affect what's going to happen today and they don't affect what's going to happen tomorrow. Mm-mm. And I guess that's the same from what you're saying. It's my past gives me information about myself and it gives me data that I can use and work with, but it's really up to you to make your tomorrow happen any way you want your tomorrow to happen. You don't have to be tied to that.
Absolutely. And there was one, I was telling you about this a little bit before, and I don't know where I read this. Can't even tell you what the quote was verbatim, but it said something about how the future is your playground. And that really hit home for me because it really is an endless blank canvas. So no matter what happened yesterday, a year ago, 10 years ago, you have the responsibility or ability to literally change anything that happened in your past and say, what do I want my tomorrow? What do I want 1 year, 5 years? And then go do it, change it.
Right.
Pick up that paintbrush and start painting on that canvas, but it takes the person to actually just say, you know what, I'm going to do something different.
Yeah, because usually, I can't because I don't have the money. I don't have the time, right?
Always.
I don't have the money. I don't have time. I can't. But it is true. Like tomorrow, if you didn't want to live in your beautiful place by the beach, like you could literally walk away and go move to Michigan or go to another country or, you don't, the immediacy is like, oh no, I can't because, I've got the lease or I just bought this place or I told my community this. Well, you could break all those things.
Right.
They're only your own personal commitments or choices or whatever. Or you can decide to end everything, in a calm way and then leave.
Yeah, wait till your lease is over.
Yeah. So you can do it anyway. But the point is, it's still you choosing. Mm-hmm. It's still you choosing every single day that you're going to stay there today. Mm-hmm. You're going to stay in that relationship today. You're going to stay at that job today. You're going to stay with that, puppy dog that we love today.
Well, and I've seen this a lot. I don't know if this is a lot, I think, with fitness and maybe other things, but I follow a lot of influencers. And, they always say like, there's always like one day and it like flips it and it's like day one, and it's like, stop saying like one day. It's like, make it, I don't know. That's how I interpret it. No, let that be day one. Make this today.
That's a good one. Yeah. I always talk about it like your life is a whiteboard, and what you put on that whiteboard, that's you putting that on the whiteboard. If you don't like it, erase the whiteboard.
Right.
Jeez, then you've got a clear blank, like you said, canvas. Mm-hmm. Like, what do you want on that whiteboard? Mm-hmm. I always go back to when I was about a fifth year CPA in a big firm. And it was miserable. There was about a year that I was really struggling. I think that's probably true for most seniors in the accounting firms where it gets really stressful because you're finally getting some knowledge. There's a huge volume of work, but you don't really know what you're doing yet, and it feels like there's so much more to learn. But now you have these responsibilities. But anyway, it was rough. And I remember one day going up the elevator and just like having that cognition of like, I am choosing this. Mm-hmm. I stepped on the elevator to get to work today. I don't have to. Mm-mm. I can press down and get off the elevator and go to the beach instead.
Yeah.
And after I had that cognition and I went to work and I was still miserable and I was like really not having a good time, the next day I got on the elevator and I got the button and I said, this. And I went down and I went out to the car and went to the beach. My suit and all. I'm like,
that's amazing.
I had to know I could make that choice. Yeah. And it was me making the choice. Mm-hmm. Nobody was forcing me to do that thing. Nobody was forcing me to show up. Nobody was forcing me to create this career path or go to this day at the work or anything. It gave me a lot of power.
Yeah, I had a similar experience with my college job. I worked in retail, and retail sucks. Customer service isn't the best. And, we were open on New Year's Day. And of course, I went out, had fun on New Year's Eve.
Right.
I was in early 20s, and I had to open the store the next day at like 7 a.m.
Oh, my God.
And this was... after a crazy Christmas and, working Black Friday and all that. And I remember showing up that morning. And I had been with the company for 5 years or so. And I'm like, I don't want to ever work on New Year's Day again. I put in my 2-week notice. And I'm like, no, we're done. Like, I don't, like you said, I don't have to be here.
Right.
Like, I'm choosing to keep this job. And the only way that I'm going to actually find something new is if I actually terminate this, where I now am in a position where I have to find something new.
Yeah.
I had no job lined up. I had no idea what I was going to do. Didn't even know what area or industry I wanted to get into. I just know that I was so done working Black Friday, Christmas Eve, the day after Christmas, New Year's Eve. I'm like, I'm not doing this anymore. We're done.
Yeah. It's kind of going back to that. Does the past define you? And I was thinking that although I don't take the position that it does define you very often. But there are situations, I guess, that is reality where it may not define you, but you have consequences from those past decisions and you have results from that. And it's kind of like going back into getting into shape. Hi, Riggs. Getting back into shape or something, like obviously if you didn't take care of yourself for a couple of years and now you've put on a few extra pounds, like that's real consequences of those past decisions that you have to deal with, and so there is the results of the past that you have to handle. But at the same time, here's a juxtaposition is I love the analogy of a boat. If you're out on a lake and you're riding in a boat, you're driving the boat, the wake is not in front of you or at you, it's behind you. The boat, the motion of the boat and the motor and the direction is what's creating the trail behind you. So your past is only the results of your actions today, not the other way around. Like how to think about that. Kind of interesting, right?
Yeah.
Because the lake in front of you is a flat lake, and that's where you're heading. Like the boat is going to go where the bow is pointed in. And whatever happens from that decision or the motion of the water is all just behind you. So it's how you look at it when you turn around and look at it that matters. Yeah,
that's a good point. There was, I'm going to do this so bad. There was this, I think it's like a Chinese story about a man, the farmer and a horse. And without getting into the actual story, it basically is you don't know if anything is going to be good or bad until it happens. And I always tell people, like, if they say, oh, is this a bad choice or am I making a bad choice? I'm like, it honestly is, you're the one that's going to make it good or bad.
Yeah. This
could either be a really good thing or it could be a really bad thing. Like I had a friend that had to face the decision to basically move her whole family, like, an hour or so away, but they were living in this for 10 to 15 years. And she's like, well, I just hope it's not a bad decision. And I said, you know what? That's on you to make it good or bad.
Right,
if you want it to be bad, you're going to make it bad. It's on you to make the best of it. So you're going to determine if it's good or bad.
Exactly. And I look back, I had to learn this personally because I had to face a lot of the decisions I made. Like, really raising kids as a teenage drug addict's not like the best choices in there. But being young and a teenager and then in my 20s and facing that after I got clean and facing that as adult with my adult kids and being able to really confront like, oh, wow, I raised you in an unethical home. I apologize for putting that burden on you to force you to have to figure that out yourself as an adult, But going back to that and being able to see that there are real results from that. But what I also had to give myself credit for is that at the time that I made a bad decision, I actually made the best decision I could possibly have made. Because at that time of making a decision, I only could make it with the data I had, with the level of awareness I had, with the understanding of the situation that I had. And so from that point of view at that time, I was still making the best decision I could make in whatever the situation was. Looking back at it over time and saying, wow, that decision was a bad decision. But in it was still trying to make the best decision I could possibly make.
Right.
And so you don't know, was it bad or good until you increase your awareness. You start to see how your consequences are from those decisions. And then you can learn to make better choices and decisions.
Yeah. No, I think that's also true. Because it might be, like you said, it might be good at the time, but now you're 10, 20 plus whatever years out. You're like, oh, that's a little sketch.
Right. Why did I think that?
You wouldn't do that now,
right.
But
Exactly. And if we tie all of this whole conversation, we are the prosperity nation. Like, how does this tie into prosperity? How does this tie into what we define prosperity as flourishing financially and personally? So being able to, how does this affect our money choices? And how does this affect our development of our own personal flourishing and prosperity? So, are you guided and driven and held back by your past? Or can you let go of your past knowing that it's the trail behind you and have the courage to actually decide for yourself what you want on your whiteboard? And I think it comes down to that. It comes down to the courage. Are you going to just follow the wake, or are you going to create what you want with that blank canvas or that open lake with the bow of the boat analogy? It's like, it's up to you. And it's very, very courageous of a decision to take responsibility for the direction of your life, honestly.
It is, because it can be really scary.
It's so scary.
Yeah.
And it's so easy to fall into
comfort.
I can't.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, there's so many, you can have so many excuses for everything.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like, looking back when I decided to just quit my job without anything lined up, no idea how I was going to pay rent. I'm like, I'll figure it out. That was probably like my life, again, would not be here today or, doing anything that I've done the past 15 or so years, since that happened. And I, instead of looking back, being like, wow, that was the dumbest thing you could have ever done. Cause I was struggling for a bit, but it also caused me to figure out what I really wanted to do and then get into that. And I had great experiences. And I don't know, I feel like everything you've done leads you to where you are now. And instead of looking at it in a bad way, it's like, wow, like, look at everything I have done. And I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't have met these people. I wouldn't be in this job or whatever, in this location, this home with this dog, if I had gone through all of those things.
Exactly.
So I feel like I'm at a place, not that I've had a great, amazing, super easy life. It hasn't been super hard either, but I've had things. I've had some but instead of looking at it in a super negative, bad way that I'm just, everything bad happens to me all the time and being a victim, I'm like, I wouldn't have what I have or be who I am now if I hadn't gone through that.
Yeah.
And
I think that gives you, and I think having that point of view and that perspective is actually what you get some freedom from. Like, that gives you that freedom to go explore, because you're not as afraid to make mistakes or bad decisions, because it's part of the process. I have a story. One time when I actually was at a point where I wanted to leave the firm, and I was so stressed about it getting, worse on that. And I really wanted to quit, and I wanted to go to a different firm, and I wanted to move on. And I actually had started applying for other jobs at other firms. And then I was really started to get conflicted, because I knew that not all bad was in the firm I was in. I was making good progress, but it was really hard. And I had that, if I go to another firm, it'll be easier, and it will be more opportunity. And that was true too. And I remember I was in North Carolina with a friend, and we were playing pool at this house we were staying at. And I was really stressed about this. Like, should I take this job or should I stay? And because I had gotten an offer at another place. And I realized that, how was I going to make this decision? Both options were good and both options were bad. Now what do you do?
Yep.
Right? And so I'm like, well, then now what do? Is you flip a coin. And I flipped a coin right there on the pool table, and it flew up. And I'm like, heads I stay, tails I take the other job. And I was 100% willing to let fate make that decision for me.
What happened?
It landed on heads, and I stayed.
Oh.
I ended up leaving, but it was another year later or so that I ended up leaving. But it really gave me that point of view on life that, I used to say it like this. My two favorite flowers, I love daisies and I do love roses. And so if somebody were to bring me a bouquet of daisies or bring me a bouquet of roses, and I could only have one, and they're both good options, they're both things I like, what do you do? That's a more courageous place to be, because what we do as humans is we make something wrong so we don't have to make that choice. Oh, daisies aren't as valuable. People, don't see daisies as a classy flower. Whatever, right? I'm going to make daisies wrong so I don't have to make the choice. And we do that all the time with our relationships, and we do that all the time with our finances, is we avoid the choice of standing up for what is really right for us. And we have to make something bad so we don't have to choose. And that's not a choice. It's not a choice to leave a relationship after you've just made it so bad you can't possibly stay there anymore. That's not a choice. That's avoidance of a choice by making something so bad that you have to now finally make the actions to leave.
And it's almost like now you're putting blame on it, but
Exactly.
Now you're being a victim to the situation.
Exactly.
That's another topic.
Exactly. We'll talk about that next week, being a victim. Anyway.
Our favorite.
I know.
But, in a way, by you hanging on to the past, by you making the past still present in your life, almost makes you a victim to the past because you're unable to actually get out of the past, and you're blaming the past and your experiences that you had on why you are who you are today or why you're doing what you're doing today.
Exactly.
So instead of being free from it, kind of like you were saying, and not being, I don't want to say victim of the past, but that's all I can think of.
Yeah.
You're unable to actually do things that you would want to do or have that freedom moving forward and create that new path.
Yeah, because it creates a fear. Like, if you failed at something 3 times, you kind of don't want to try it again. But and that's where you have to say, it doesn't matter if I failed 3 times. What do I need to learn now so that I can be successful at this?
Right.
And that's the detachment of the past, of realizing that's your trail. That's not what's driving you. That's what's behind you.
Right.
And it's just courageous. And I guess that's kind of to tie it all up for the whole show. That's what we're trying to help everybody take that ownership of having the courage to create a life you love. Because if you are living a life you love and you are doing those things in life that bring you that most level of aliveness, you are contributing to making the entire world a better place. We all have to do it if we want a world that we live in that's prosperous. Every person has to take responsibility for their own prosperity, their own ability to be flourishing as a person and flourishing financially. There's no way to do it if you let yourself be a victim on either one of those 2 things.
Right. Exactly. We
that's
like
what
victims.
Exactly. So that's what we're talking about here on the show, is let's get out of this victimhood. Now, it's easy to be in it when there's tariffs and the market's going up and down and there's so much uncertainty, but we don't have to be. That's my point. So, hey, we want to hear what you think about this too. What do you think about the past? Is it driving you? Is it affecting you? Or can you just let it go and have the courage to do the next thing looking forward? So share your stories with us. How can they do that, Elise?
They can share them. They can like and subscribe. They can comment. Please do that. Yeah. You can also email us at stories@prosperitynation.com. But go ahead and make sure you follow so you can continue to listen.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and we definitely want to put, hear your comments, share share what you're thinking, be part of the journey with us.
Even if you disagree. I want to know
exactly. All right, we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us today. Like and subscribe to videos from us on YouTube. Follow us online for the latest episodes, updates, and more. And invite others to join us at prosperitynation.com. That's it for now. We'll see you next time on the Prosperity Nation podcast.